Greetings and good everything, and happy Ujima or Habari Gani.
Habarigani, Ujima is collective work and responsibility, which is what we're doing.
Yes, yes. Hi.
All
I
right.
was I was thinking about something, catching up on all of the television that
Yeah.
my one vice that I allow myself. So I'm
Not
watching.
advice.
It is sort of because I watch some trash too. But on Netflix they have this show called Black Dove, and it's espionage, spies, and all of this stuff. And there's a lot of stuff happening. I'm not gonna get into it, but there was a one scene where the head of the organization is saying to this woman, you can't take down these organizations, this organization, this crime organization, because it would be like taking down McDonald's. And I was like, but McDonald's, I'm alive longer than McDonald's has been trading publicly.
How
Like,
about that? How about that?
and I was thinking about Apple. I was thinking about Tesla. I was thinking about
Hmm.
Twitter.
Hmm.
We're in our generation, we watch these things. Now that man's the richest man in the world and our president. And I was like, that didn't take a long time to create an industry that some other people feel is too big to take down, too big to fail. We watch banks go under that were too big to fail.
Yeah.
So I was reverse engineering as I was looking at today's offering,
Hmm.
and I was
Hmm.
grateful because I'm like, we got thousands of years of history to rely upon to
Yes.
build, and we don't have to build from scratch. And we have things that still exist that we can take from and add to instead of always trying to start from scratch or copy something that is relatively new.
That's right.
And yet we think it's impenetrable. So I would just
Yeah.
want to, I was encouraged this morning because I said, hey,
Yeah.
all things are possible. I remember when there wasn't a McDonald's. Okay.
No question. No question. And when you asked for it, your parents were like, "You got McDonald's at home."
Oh, you got McDonald's money was always the
You
response.
got
You
oh
have
yeah, for
McDonald's
sure.
money? No, I
You got
don't.
McDonald's money? No, then
You're going you're gonna eat what I feed you. Yes.
eat what I feed you, and we adjusted to it.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no. And what does it mean to be the richest? Really, I mean, what does it mean? We like I said, we talk about Mansa Musa, and he's demonstrating his piety and gave away all that gold and devalued gold for a time, and that's all very very impactful. In fact, as we all know now, he became really in many ways a symbol for Africa and alerted these Europeans to the possibility of material wealth that didn't trigger the invasion, but certainly accelerated it. That having been said, what was the value? Because value is not in gold. This is all perception. So Elon Musk is a boil on humanity. Ultimately, he will burst. He's not a he's a negligible factor because there are limits, right? I mean, people we talk about, what do you think, Prof? I mean, is there a reason in your mind why the word sustainability has surged in recent years, particularly the last, maybe half decade? Why is sustainability on the lips of these people who are ravenous in their desires, in their moves, in their attempts to just kind of like convert everything to a number, to a monetary? Why is sustainability so big, do you think, in the minds of these folks?
Because they know they're destroying everything, right? So it's, you know,
Yes.
so they're signaling to us what is actually happening. It's the opposite. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
None of this is sustainable. None of this is.
It's unsustainable.
Yeah. So
And that's what it is. It's funny. I took the bus down here to Georgia,
you
not
took the bus,
because
not the midnight train. You took the,
not the midnight train, the
the,
midnight bus though.
the
Yeah, the midnight
midnight.
bus. The
Oh,
dog, the dog left at 12:30 from Washington
you
D
are such
station.
a marvel of
No, that's not a mar. That's just I'm old. I'm just old school and I'm set
no,
in my ways.
no,
That's all.
no. Because there's a method to your madness. There's time to
Absolutely.
read and be
Always,
in community like
always,
this. There's something to
always.
be studied here. I can't
Uh,
prove it.
no, 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 always. Now I'm gonna fly back because I gotta thread the needle, right? We do the show, and then I'm gonna get on a plane and get off, and I'll be back. So
Can
next
I just
week,
say
but
thank you? I was driving around Wednesday because I'm doing absolutely nothing
no, you working.
except for the no.
Your mind is always working. To me,
Well,
that's
that
all work.
well, I made a commitment. I said I'm not doing anything. This 2 weeks, I've not done nothing. Well, and I'm doing everything, but
Yeah, exactly.
but
That's
it's
what I'm saying.
but what I'm saying is publicly, it's sustainable. But
Oh, I got you.
but
Right.
I was driving around. I was like, I know these Negroes are not on the radio live on a
Yes.
Wednesday. It's like I was like, I'm
Well,
gonna call in, but that man called in and then kept y'all in a
the
headlock
pro-
with
the
the
prophet, the prophet, and then he had one of his disciples call in the next day, like, "Wow, this is
oh my
fascinating."
God.
But just it's
Wait,
like, I mean,
I went shopping, went to the store, came back, got the car. He was still
you said
talking.
that,
I said,
still
he's
talking.
still talking.
Nah,
Okay.
we figured it was, I mean, this was a one-off because, like you said before, we learning. At least I'm learning. Lamont already knows, cut people off, and I just be like, what else? What? No, so yeah, that was a. I think we were going somewhere with that. Plus, people were like, "Really? Is
No,
this
it was
guy really?"
fascinating. It was fascinating. I
Yeah,
was like, I
yeah, it
know
was.
he is not still on here telling
Yeah,
his
he
story.
was. He was.
And then
Yeah,
wait, when he said to make a long story short, I said it's too late.
it's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah, as Denzel Washington says, to make a long story long, like, yeah, you just all right, keep talking. But yeah, it was no. But yeah, of course, we
But thank you. I just wanted to say that to say thank. I was like, somebody is live on Urban View, and it's you, of
Oh,
course.
of
And I
course. No,
appreciate
no,
it.
no.
Thank you.
But in all, fair shout out to Daryl Green, who, Joe's wingman for many years, who has us pre-tape a lot of stuff live. So even just on those one days, then we have like probably between 45 minutes and an hour of pre-recorded live. So we don't come in there. I mean, if I'm in town, I will come because as we were talking about before we went live here, Daryl comes in the building, so I feel like he in there. I'm in there, and typically it's very interesting. You know this world. I don't. It's fascinating. The first time we met, when Aj brought me up there, and we got a chance to, the place was bustling with activity, and I'm sure that was what it was like pre-COVID in Washington. But it's cavernous and empty, and it's so fascinating to see these handful of people, the engineers who work the mother kind of thing, and then Daryl is. He's not the only guy in there on the board, only one producing it, but he is one of such a tiny group that to watch them, I try to get down there as early as possible. So we going at 7, so I might be there between 5:36. I'm just reading the papers, I'm sitting there. And then afterwards, if I don't have to rush off and go somewhere, I might sit there for a few minutes. And to watch no more than 3 to 5 people in this cavernous place. They all know Daryl. He all knows them, and they're talking shop. I'm like, "Yeah, this is fascinating because if I'm just like say riding around or I'm listening to the Sirius XM app, or I'm projecting in my mind this huge place full of people. No, and was that COVID? Is that what?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. For
Oh,
sure. For sure. Because
mm,
all of the places were full. And now we figured out, like I could do my show from anywhere. You can do the show from anywhere.
right.
LA I hear is really nice, but people aren't. They got a Miami thing, they got a Nashville thing, they got studios everywhere.
They have
But
an Atlanta thing
yeah,
apparently, but I just
yeah,
said, no, I'll just
yeah,
try.
yeah. But people can do this anywhere now because there's satellite is as long as you can plug in. And now we learned during COVID we could do the show via Zoom, via StreamYard. Like it's wild,
Yeah,
technology.
it is wild. The technology is but and the limits, as you say, and this is what we are being exactly what you said. It's the opposite. People are trying to convince us for their own selfish reasons that growth is eternal and inexhaustible, but we're already bumping against the limits. Like I said, when I'm riding down, and you're exactly right. I do that so that I can read, so that I can, listen to people. I found out something fascinating about the bus. It calls me as now I'm doing research because, I'll ride the Greyhound, but Greyhound's been bought by Flix. Flix is a German company that apparently has a huge and outsized footprint in terms of buses in Europe, in Latin America. Two college buddies who got together. I mean, it amazes me how these white dudes good. So Flix owns Greyhound. So I can't even ride the dog like I used to. But I'm watching, and all the drivers, this is not exaggerating, and say, oh, there were three Chinese. The Chinese dude left Union Station in DC. We coming in through Richmond. You get past Richmond. He pulls into this nondescript parking lot. A guy in an unmarked car, it looked like it was almost one of those cop cars you buy at auction, white car, gets out of a car. Gets in the driver's seat. The other dude gets out of the bus, gets in that same car, and drives off. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Then we're in North Carolina. It happens again. This Chinese dude gets off the bus, gets in this car. The other dude Chinese gets in the car, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And then about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta, this second driver, actually, yeah, second driver, he pulls into a parking lot. What the hell? And I look, and I can see in his rearview mirror. So I look around, and these young guys, I assume they're Chinese, I would put them maybe in their teens and 20s, start unloading boxes off a truck that are loading boxes on a truck that are coming from out underneath the bus, and we're on the other side where the baggage is. And I'm looking and looking, and then they just take off. They come to Atlanta, and the only other time I've seen people unload boxes like that is the ubiquitous Chinatown bus that goes from the Chinatowns, from Boston to New York to DC to Philly. I've ridden that bus many times, and I've seen that same unloading, which leads me to believe finally that whatever Flix and Greyhound have, Flix really, is different than what these dudes are doing. And I'm like, this is fascinating to me.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't have seen it if I had been on the bus. But I'm saying,
Right.
that's sustainable. That's an economy. That's people figuring out how to make things work. But what's unsustainable is what Elon Musk is doing. Because one of the things I read on the bus was end of the year summary and what's going on for 2025 from The Economist. You do an annual magazine, and they have an article that's called "The Real Limits on Artificial Intelligence." And they talk about the fact that all these chips, and of course, NVIDIA is the beast in
Hmm.
this. You know,
Yes.
all these chips, everything they're doing have to be powered. And the simple fact of the matter is, and they're naming countries that don't have the grid, that can't do it. So it isn't that they don't have the technology, it's that they can't figure out the power.
Yes.
So so,
Yeah.
so they're
I mean,
talking that smack, but yeah, go ahead. That's
and
fascinating to me.
even no, I was just, two immigrants fighting. I mean, it's wild what's happening right now. And if you're not paying attention, stay asleep. Because don't worry,
Yeah.
it's gonna roll over on you, and you'll wonder what happened. But
Yeah.
I'm listening to, oh, you won't have to vote again. You don't have to work. We're gonna make sure that there won't be jobs. And I was thinking about all the people who feel like my job won't be taken away from me. They've built technology into your computer. Every keystroke has been mimicked. Like there's already a shadow thing happening at your job. If you are data entry, if you're doing something, technology is going to be doing that job. So if you're in one of those jobs, those good government jobs that they're going to eliminate, that require people to enter things, your computer's already mirroring
Already.
what you're doing, and your computer's not calling in sick. Your computer's not,
Nope.
don't have family emergencies. Your computer is not, going to slow down. What It's already
No.
in motion. And I think a
That's right.
lot of us who are in these, even the gig economy, you got driverless delivery cars, all of you doing the, Grub Hubs and all that, Uber Eats, Uber, like they're already teeing it up. And the lie is, it's for the, well, we're concerned about climate. But the lithium batteries, I just saw a video, the harm to the environment for these, oh
Yes.
my God. It's like this will
Yes.
be the end of society right here. The damn lithium
Oh
batteries
yeah.
that y'all throw in the garbage,
That's
which is
right.
horrible.
That's right.
I'm saying, like,
That's
do
right.
we are we prepared? And then at the same time, Dr. Carr, we're here. So I don't want to
We're here.
run around and tell the truth all the time because it's scary. So I'd rather sit in community and build, the next thing that people say, can't be taken down. Like now's the time. Now's the time.
Now's the
We're
time.
in our 50s. McDonald's ain't been traded that long. The McDonald's brother didn't even have an idea of what this conglomerate was gonna be. When the guy came in and was like, "Hey, I have an idea. It ain't about the burgers. It's about the real estate." And so now here we are, Ray Kroc. I mean, it's fascinating to me that we are 251 episodes in, built something just out of an idea of like, you're brilliant, everyone should know. And now we have a community of
Right.
people who have made it their business to be in community with people, who made their business to be a
Mm.
community with people. And to me, the possibilities are endless. So
They
I'm
are.
excited
There
about
are
that.
no limitations.
Yes. So
And I agree with you. And you're right. And we have to do it together. And we're doing it together. When when you say, because you see things, and you all know this, we all know this about you. You see things, and then you'll say, well, it might work, it may not work. Let's try it, which takes a certain type of character, a certain type of thing that's indescribable is in you. And then you're not afraid to trust that if this doesn't work, something else will. And so we know that learning is all about what we learn from experience. And so here we are, as you say, here we are coming into this fifth year, and the drum beat, the consistency, the foundation has been laid. One that actually, let me not say the foundation, let me say that another layer on the foundation, because we came into this because you'd already laid a foundation and been part of a foundation and been part of a genealogy. And that's the other thing people find very easy to understand once we say it. You look at somebody like Elon Musk, he doesn't have a genealogy. He was born into something, and he has been failing ever since. But because he was born into so much, it appears as if he is this genius. No, he was born at the right time in the right circumstances. And
with an
uh
emerald mind,
yeah,
mind, emerald
exactly.
mind, you know,
Exactly. And our money in his pocket. Because,
correct.
of course, without those government contracts, him and Bezos is the reason why they're both sitting with their feet under Donald Trump's dinner table at Mar-a-Lago last week, because they get ready to try to steal even more. And so it's fine. But what they can't take is what we're tapping into. And, it's fascinating to say that, because it's fascinating to hear you say what you said, because that thing it is inexhaustible. If we could have been killed, we'd be dead. Instead, what is being revealed is that the criminal enterprise that George Washington and his friends set up, James Madison and them, as brilliant as they were in moments, the indefensible way that we were brutalized and treated, that thing is going to come apart, because it is unsustainable. It may, it didn't come apart in a week, it didn't come apart in the years. We talked about a month and a half ago, as they themselves said, they didn't expect it to survive a generation. The fact that it has survived has been in spite of what they did. But guess what? Since their descendants are still committed to the same type of criminal, anti-human, immoral behavior, it is now on the verge of coming apart. That doesn't mean we're going to come apart. And that's the hard thing for us to understand, because we've been diseducated in a way to think that the fate of a country is somehow the fate of the people in the country. Those are two very different things. So when I see Beyonce driving these racists into conniption fits, while two immigrants, are like, oh yeah, all y'all people that voted for us, oh, we get rid of y'all anyway. We gonna get more people that are closer to her color than yours. It's driving them crazy. But and then we see, God bless Deion Sanders. Hope he wins every game he ever seen. But then Michael Vick, who's from Newport, I'm saying, and then I'm gonna be the football coach at Norfolk State. And of course, at some point, Virginia Tech, they're gonna pull the same play on Mike Vick that they did on Deion Sanders. We gotta get this guy out of the paint. But I think this might be a little different. And if it isn't, fine. But at the press conference, who shows up in his fur collared jacket but Allen Iverson? I said, boy, if these guys, and then Timberland and Missy Elliott were born in Portsmouth and Norfolk. Well, if this jumps off, whatever Deion Sanders was doing, first of all, it's not the Deion Sanders effect. People forget Doug Williams was at Graham. I mean, but it's fine. Deion did have a great deal to do with this kind of buzz.
And
But if
Eddie was before him too.
Eddie was at Tennessee State, and God bless Delaware State. I don't know what they're doing. They didn't hire Deshaun Jackson to be the head coach. But here's the thing: the thing you're talking about, the inexhaustible thing, the thing that can't be wrecked, that's what's powering this. Elon Musk, fine. But black people had this thing where we just gonna walk in here and see, you know what? Let's do this. What are y'all doing? Don't worry about it. We just gonna try this. But just like you said, press record. Let's see, can we do this? And now you got, how's the podcast going? I meant to ask you, but I
Oh,
want to ask you for the world. Tell
oh,
me, tell us about this
oh.
podcast.
No, I was telling you off mic, because as much as I'm nimble, I'm also a little, like I know what needs to happen, but you also have to watch industry, right? So if the
Mm.
company you're in is pouring a $500 million into something and you're not in it, then you won't be in it.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
so I said to myself, y'all just put $500 million. You just paid some lady I had never heard of $200 million for a podcast. I know I could do that. That's how I think. I could do that, right?
Well,
I know
no
you're not gonna
question.
give me 200 million, but I can make it. So,
Yes.
so let me see what this is. And I said, oh, it's radio that's edited. What we do is hard, right? Oh, let me just say it.
Is that
Doing
what it is? Help
late
us, because
live
a
radio.
podcast is
They, they interviewing, they talking, they just talking. And then some people, depends. Everything's a podcast now. So not everything is a podcast. So I don't even think they know what it is. So if it's recorded, then some of it's video. I said, oh, this is some book. Okay, I could do this, And so yeah, I got some stuff to say because live radio, you got a caller that may hijack your whole show.
yeah,
You
we
gotta
had
you gotta
the Messiah called in last week.
you
That's
got to
true.
figure out how to not be nasty at the same time. Like there's millions of people listening. They don't deserve this. So let me try to gently lead this person out. Or if you got somebody that's swift with the sound effects, let's get them the hell up out of here so that we can get back. You and I come in with a plan. I'm sure Laura
Yeah.
has a plan. We have a plan. Somebody's going to mess
Yes.
up your plan during 3 hours. I promise you.
You
Right?
said, I promise. I promise you.
I promise you. Your 3 hours. Every day I leave with like 3 pages of notes I didn't even get to. All right, tomorrow maybe we'll get to it. Somebody's going, it's a school shooting, something's happening. You are dealing in the moment. Podcasts allow you to sit and like plan. If you're good, you're gonna plan out your week, your month. I've planned out the whole year, if I'm being honest.
What?
Yeah, because
Wow.
I have a plan. I know what I want to talk about, and it all kind of I thread it together. And I got my conversation. I just talked with Pastor Frederick Douglass Haynes the
Freddie
third.
Haynes.
But we're gonna do a whole thing
Yes.
on Revelations, which is something that I've been
Ooh.
dabbling with for most of my life. So I was
Yeah,
like,
you've
I
been
don't do
talking
that.
about that.
Yeah, I don't do it on the radio because it's not appropriate for what we do. And I don't want to invite. I don't want it to turn into Bible Answer Woman. Like it's a specific thing that we do on Urban View. So allows me to talk to people differently. I'm gonna have a conversation with my mama about getting married at 70, and like things I would never bring to the radio. Having personal conversations, and it's more intimate. It is more thoughtful, and again, you can edit. I don't want to use that. Once it's out on the radio, it's out. You done said it.
Yeah,
That's why you got to,
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't just put anybody out there because they're liable to say stuff, and
No question, no question, no question.
so yeah, I'm
Wow. So and people are. I was wondering because when you launched it, and it makes so much sense listening to you say this. You know, we've been talking about that here. This is the season when people are talking and debriefing and trying to figure out what is going on. And we'll do a little bit of that today since this is the last day of the calendar year. We're together on Saturday. Uh, the idea that there's now a generation close to two that doesn't have any memory of, that doesn't have an experience of media that was centralized in a way that it put a floor under collective experience. So there are three broadcast channels and PBS. No, now it's everywhere all the time. And it's not even the generation that came up on cable. It's the cable news network. What is CNN? What is Fox? No, all there is the devices and your desire. So even in the middle of Christmas day, we're sitting around eating, and these young people immediately, it's time for Beyonce. Huh? What? And the old people were like, what? And it's like, and just so, and help me with this too, because I know you've been talking about it, but help us as well, because even that description of podcasting helps me kind of process, like say, if you're not in it, then this is going to be a problem. What is the play for completely eviscerating the cable concept? So Netflix, no commercials, Beyonce, then they're gonna release it as a separate Amazon streaming the NFL game. No, what's that play? The streaming play.
Oh no, but they're doing commercials. So they played us. Okay, no commercials.
Okay,
Okay,
come on.
so here, hey, you're paying for no commercials. You're paying to do whatever you want and however you want to do it. And now they got commercials. I got to pay an extra what to not have commercials? I'm not paying that. So I'm like sitting through commercials again. I was like, oh, you got me. You got me. And now your streaming sucks because it's buffering and stuff. It's not even as good as my cable. And now it costs just as much if I want to have all of the platforms, and they're all now coming together like Voltron, now Disney's, Hulu, and every. I said, oh, this is what they do. This is what they do, right? And so I'm encouraged, Dr. Carr, because
Me too.
I'm not led by, the business of it. I'm led by the, like, how can we build something that will be here after our eyes close, and that
Certainly.
people can build upon, right? So I'm like, this is interesting. They keep building these sustainable things that are not sustainable on
And that,
purpose because they're greedy. So they want to get as
that's
much
right.
money as they can and get their shareholders. And we see how that's turning. There's some stuff happening
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
Things are happening
Yes. Things are happening. And
that
doing things together. I mean, here we are, the third day of Kwanzaa, Ujima,
a
which
made
is
up holiday,
no
right?
question.
As,
Like
as
every
all
holiday,
holidays are, right?
as all holidays are, no question. One that has the benefit of having been made up in the wake of many every other holiday prior to 60 years ago, well, almost 60, 1966 is when Kwanzaa came into existence. And I haven't talked to him in some time. Well, I say some time. It was this year, but very early in the year, Malana Karenga, who is is still out there on the West Coast, he and the collective around him, us, which doesn't mean United Slaves. Academics is us or United Slaves. It doesn't mean United Slaves. Every time I pick up an academic book and somebody says that, I realize what you don't know. But now you've been corrected. You shouldn't do it anymore unless you're doing it deliberately, which I could absolutely understand since you love your master. But that came into existence less than 60 years ago, which means it had the benefit, Kwanzaa has the benefit of two things. It has the benefit of number two, well, really number one, but I'm going to say it first. So I'll say it first. It has the benefit of us. That's why the organization Us was called Us. And I'm not going to go through all that because going again to this collective effort that the science and technology, thanks to the power of narrative and the narrative team, has been able to collect and convene in a way we can now go into that beautiful bibliography that emerged, that almost 1600-page bibliography, and source out and then track through with time signatures in the conversations we've had over these last nearly 5 years. We can so we can kind of go through and see. So if you want to go and look at the entire conversations we've had over several kind of annual conversations about Kwanzaa, you can go to session 43, which is on the origins of Kwanzaa, where we talk about everything from Keith Mays's book, which is excellent on Kwanzaa, to Karenga's book, which came out at the same time the Kwanzaa stamp was unveiled in 1997. So I won't go through all that history. If you want to go back, just look at session 43, session 94, which was entitled Merry Christmas and Happy Kwanzaa, where we talk about Kwanzaa again. And then session 147, from the Pope to Pele, and then celebration of community, where we talk about Kwanzaa in another context. And we see there's a little article by Malika Jabali that was published in Essence magazine last year that we talk about, called Yes, Black People Celebrate Kwanzaa, and Here's Why. And it tracks some of the personal stories. This young sister talks about, as a child, sipping from the kikombe wa umoja, the cup of unity, the cup that's one of the symbols of Kwanzaa, along with the corn, with the mat, the makeke, with the zawadi, the gifts, which should be handmade or purchased at Black-owned businesses, with the Knarra, the candle holder, with the seven candles, the red, black, and green, with all of these pieces that collectively become the kind of ritual center for Kwanzaa. We talked about that in we talked about Malika Jabali in session 194, saying how she grew up in a household where her parents were part of that movement, that cultural movement that emerged out of the 1960s and 70s. Her mother, in fact, took the name Imani, like so many others, Imani, either birth name or taken name. So my friend, my sister, the brilliant Imani Perry, the scholar Imani Perry, who has a new book actually coming out on the color blue and what blue means to Black people. I was reading about the book. I don't have it yet. I'll get it when I go back to the East Coast. But she that's her birth name. But in the case of this sister, Malika Jabali's mother, a taken name, Imani, Faith, the last day of Kwanzaa, and she writes about Aminata Umoja and her husband, her partner, my big brother, Baba OG, the OG Akinyeli Umoja, Baba AK. who is here, a longtime professor at Georgia State University in African American Studies, the shoulders upon which I stand, and so many of us stand, and his life partner, his wife, his comrade, Aminata Umoja, who, of course, they started, she is the founder of the Quilombo Learning Center, the Colombo Education Center, the Colombo School and Cultural Center here in Atlanta, and grew up, of course, on the West Coast and was deeply grounded, present near the creation of Kwanzaa. And here in Atlanta, for many years, that formation and Malcolm X Grassroots Coalition responsible for the night of Kwanzaa, which was yesterday, the second night, Kujichagulia, self-determination. So they do that. In fact, I was Roland is on vacation, so I took let me see, I took Thursday and Friday night to sit in the chair and host, well, for him while he was out. Shout out to Carol Gant, the producer there at Roland Martin at Foot Filters. They, do you mind taking? I said, no, I'll take it. I'll be glad to do that. I mean, I'm sit there, I believe in working. So, but I raise it because that's why I could not be present last night here in Atlanta at the Shrine of the Black Madonna. The Shrine of Black Madonna did Kujichagulia as well as several other places here in the city. And I wish I could have been there last night, Kujichagulia, there on the West End in Atlanta, in the shadow of the Atlanta University Center, because the keynote speaker and the kind of center around which the Kujichagulia celebration was built last night was our brother, Omatosho, Bob Omatosho, Dr. Daniel Black. And so I'm gonna catch up with Dan, I know, before I leave the city. But these kind of things, and Aminata is talking about that in the article that I referred to that we talked about in session 194. And it's important for us to understand that Kwanzaa, as people say, it's a made up holiday. Yeah, it is. And guess what? It has the advantage, number two, of being about, number one, about being about us. We come together, doing things together. There's a song, Sweet Honey, in the rock sing that the chorus in it is doing things together comes naturally. Doing things together comes naturally. No human being does things by themselves. Even when we do something by ourselves, ultimately we need assistance. We need assistance to learn. We need assistance to grow. We need assistance to fight, to combat. I mean, this is the holiday corridor, which means there's been a lot of fighting around dinner tables. There's been a lot of fighting. But guess what? Even that's a relationship. Doing things together comes naturally. And so that's number one. Kwanzaa has that benefit, doing things together, whether it be umoja, unity, whether it be kujichagulia, self-determination, whether it be ujima, collective work and responsibility, ujamaa, cooperative economics, whether it be creativity, kuumba, whether it be nia, purpose, whether it be imani, faith. I mean, the whole idea that we're doing things collectively, we're crowdsourcing, we're moving together. So that's number one. Number two, Kwanzaa has the advantage of being very young because the type of thinking work that empties into a collective, from a collective into an individual. And the West is very good about this by raising the names of individuals and making it look like these are singular geniuses that sprouted out of nowhere and have shifted everything. That's simply not true. Another reason I appreciate watching Beyonce Knowles Carter with what appeared to be 3 to 4 trillion people at Energy Field dancing in unison in all white. And you know, and of course there's going to be, I imagine, at Harvard and Howard, I imagine there's going to be out at UCLA and at Columbia and NYU, there are going to be whole classes built around this performance, the so-called Beyonce Bowl, and that's fine. People love to do that kind of thing. But I'm thinking about the idea that all this collective energy sends a message. Doing things together comes naturally. I mean, James Brown was the hardest man, working man in show business. Beyonce Knowles Carter might be the hardest. I think she is the hardest working woman in. So, I mean, even the performances, the choreography, the whole move. It's like this is fascinating to see this collective movement, this collective work and responsibility, because it's work. Performance is work, and there's responsibility. Don't mess up the step. Make sure you get ahead. We're gonna overburden this. We're gonna do this. And so Kwanzaa has the benefit of not only being collective, but having borne witness because of the intellectual force of those who have poured into it. The people beyond number who empty into a space. And so when we say Malana Karenga, you're not just looking at Dr. Karenga, you're looking at all the people convened around him, and he is convened around. So it isn't just fun and games all the time. When you read the book, What We Stood For, you understand that us goes through some things, some very difficult things. And when Sister Deborah writes in What We Stood For about what happens in the wake of those very difficult things, you understand that these are relationships that are harmful, and these are relationships out of which something very beautiful is born, but to every birth, it's blood. It's a difficult thing, and we struggle. When you look at the red, black, and green, when you look at black for the people, when you look at red for the blood of the people, also for struggle, and green for prosperity, for the future, for the possibilities of blackness, that red, black, and green together is a powerful statement that transcends these funky little lines that these colonizers and these settlers drew in their minds and then on paper to divide people by land. This is a cultural concept that we fundamentally reject. We are not descended from the enslaved. We are descended from captives who are descended from those who are not. We are African people. And that red, black, and green doesn't have a passport. It is a global concept. It's a universal concept. Red, you know, red for the blood that was shed, black for the people God led, green for the future for us all. That's a little statement. That's a little phrase that used to be on T-shirts back in the 80s. We get them red for the blood that was shed, black for the people God led, green for the future that awaits us all. I mean, the whole idea of the red, black, and green, as Roy Ayers would sing, red, black, and green. If you think about it, you know what I mean. In other words, I love that song, red, black, and green. If you think about it, you know what I mean. In other words, there's a visceral thing. There's almost an elemental thing. There's a way of knowing that when you hit certain cultural meaning making, you ain't got to explain all that stuff. Red, black, and green. You think about it, you know what I mean. It ain't red, white, and blue, friends. Nah, not red, white, and blue. Can't be redeemed. You see, when I see that American flag, I can just as easily hum, oh, I wish I were in the land of cotton. It's all red, white, and blue, isn't it? Red, black, and green. If you think about it, you know what I mean. So Kwanzaa, not only in terms of being collective, but also having the benefit of everything else came before it. It's a made-up holiday. Sure is. And unlike Christmas, uh, Kwanzaa is less than 60 years old. Christmas is going to take you back nearly a couple of thousand years. So there's a couple of thousand years of trial and error and experience between Christmas and Kwanzaa. Guess what? Kwanzaa benefits from all of that experience. It's a collective, it's crowdsourced knowledge. It comes together and we say, Hanukkah, yeah, okay, yeah. Jewish, Muslim, Ifa, Odu Ifa, Vodun, Santeria, Candomblé, all of those things. Kwanzaa is expansive. It contains multitudes. It is able to incorporate all of that around concepts and principles that are inviolate and universal, that are not exhaustible, that can then be poured into our collective advancement. Doing things together comes naturally. I was reading on the bus, as I said, this is the World Ahead 2025. This is every year, as I said, the Economist does this. And I read it just, to stay informed about what they're thinking, not to take any of this as the gospel truth. There was an article in here by Henry Tricks, who is the tech editor at The Economist. It's called The Real Limits on Artificial Intelligence. The Real Limits on Artificial Intelligence. Get ready for super chips, supercomputers, and supersized headaches. The headaches come because the energy need is unsustainable. Talks about the Elon Musk's so-called gigafactory of compute in Memphis, expected to boast 200,000 GPUs. But the energy and chips are not the only real-world constraints on AI. You also have the pressure to build bigger and better generative AI models that will create strains along the semiconductor supply chain. So as you say, Prof, you talk about those lithium batteries. Well, the simple fact of the matter is China has a stranglehold on those minerals. So from getting the minerals to producing the things the minerals use to produce, China's in a great position. And so, you know, there are the limits of the natural resources and who has control of them, and they're going to lead to real conflict. Meanwhile, what I thought was fascinating about this article is at the beginning, I'll read it to you. Henry Tricks. This is how it starts. 15 years, Trix writes, 15 years after his death, David Blackwell's name will be on every nerd's lips in 2025. I saw the name David Blackwell and I froze. I was like, oh shit, David Blackwell? This couldn't be the same David Blackwell. Next sentence. NVIDIA, as we know, a semiconductor giant, has named its latest superchip after the mathematician and game theorist David Blackwell, who was the first African American inducted into the National Academy of Science. Now, black people don't own NVIDIA. Some Negroes work at NVIDIA, a handful, but they don't own it. They named their chip, their premier chip, the one that's powering everything now in terms of generative AI, the latest advance, the thing that they're going to have to figure out how to power because they sucking up all the energy and they got to worry about the present member. The chip itself is named for a black dude, a master mathematician that I did not know David Blackwell's name because he was a mathematician first. I knew his name a quarter century ago because when I came to Howard, I was hired by a titan in mathematics, James Donaldson, James Ashley Donaldson, who was a junior, uh, kind of not apprentice for, but kind of a junior protege of David Blackwell, because for 10 years, a few of those years in which he headed the Department of Mathematics, David Blackwell was professor at Howard University. This is the genealogy. So when you read NVIDIA has the Blackwell chip, understand that Blackwell is a black man, a master mathematician who taught at Howard for a decade and then left Howard and went to the University of California, Berkeley, where he taught for the balance of the rest of his professional life. This is a man, David Blackwell, who, as he tells the story, as he would tell the story, Blackwell said, I wrote 105 letters to HBCUs looking for a job after I got my PhD, went to the University of Illinois. He said, I then got in my car and drove through the South to over 30 HBCUs. I go on campus, find the math department, say, hey, do y'all need somebody to work here? They usually refer me to the president. And he said, finally got 3 job offers. See, I took the first one. That was Southern University, where he started teaching. Then he went to Clark Atlanta University. Then he went from Clark, well, now Clark Atlanta, then Clark College. He went to Clark. And then in 1940, I want to say five, he ended up at Howard, where he stayed for about 10 years, and then he went out to Berkeley. A towering mathematician who, if you read the social structure history books, they will talk about his individual accomplishments. Oh, yes, come on, man.
Professor, what does it mean that NVIDIA named this chip for him? Is this some a source of celebration? Is this what is this? And how
I
should
take
we be receiving it?
well, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't celebrate it. I take it as a point of entry to make the underlying point. So absolutely, they are doing it, of course, because it doesn't cost them anything. It looks like a nice little gesture while they continue to build better and better chips, which will create more and more problems for people when you plunk down a nuclear reactor like Amazon wants 3 Mile Island to start up in the middle of a community that can't stop it, or the South Side of Chicago, or in Houston somewhere, as Robert Bullard and the environmental justice scholars talk about. When you start putting these things to power your chips in communities that are vulnerable, and then you say, but we named the chip for a black man. It's offensive. Absolutely. For me, it became a point of entry, like most of these things are. For me to just to say that the Blackwell that they call themselves, patting themselves on the back while they screw the poor and black folk, they pat themselves on the back for naming that chip. The Blackwell they named it for did not come out of a void, was not an individual. In fact, was not like he wasn't like the sisters, the daughters of Shishette, who get a movie after a book by Margot Lee Shetterly called Hidden Figures. They're not individual savants who woke up one day doing math. As Blackwell talks about, he said, when I came to Howard, when I was at Southern and then Clark. But when I came to Howard, these black institutions were where I sharpened my skills as a mathematician. And he talks about being at Howard at a time when, in many places, the whole goal was to get a PhD. And Howard said, that's what you started with the PhD. The goal is to do research. I wanted to be a mathematician. So I'm not an administrator. I don't want to be an administrator. I want to be a mathematician. And I had the best, not just in math. He talks about Sterling Brown being there in English and E. Franklin Frazier in sociology. He said, John Hope Franklin and I were junior colleagues together. He was in history, I was in mathematics. So steel sharpens steel. So when you see a David Blackwell, he's coming out of a community, doing things together, comes naturally. Just like when you see a Katherine Johnson, a so-called hidden figure. Just like when you see these sisters, they went to HBCUs. And Howard was one of those HBCUs where they went, some of them, for advanced graduate study, that math department. So put his name on a chip for NVIDIA looks like a publicity stunt, which is what it is. Looks like DEIU, homage or whatever. No, but for us, it becomes a moment, just a pinprick of a moment, a throwaway line in an article about what these chips represent and what they face in terms of the limits. It becomes a point of entry to discuss the underlying principle, the underlying way of knowing, the underlying governance formation that we have to return to. Because in a moment, I'll talk about what the implications of this generative AI are for those of us who have not had the foundational grounding in literacy. And we'll talk more about that. So yeah, that's what it means to me. So again, continuing this in the spirit of Kwanzaa, if you want to go back and look at the more extensive conversations, as I said, there's 199, session 199, where we talked about Nia, a reflection on our purpose. That's last year. In fact, it came in the wake of 198, which was Things Fall Apart. We talked about the Reparations Commission in New York. We're coming up on the year anniversary of the naming of that commission. In fact, that was also the first time in 199 where we mentioned the book James, which won the National Book Award. But of course, here, James not news to us. Why? Because we know Percival Everett's work. We've talked about it many times. Erasure and so much blue, and I'm not Sidney Poitier, all that stuff. So James was just, remember, we talked about that the week it came out, which ironically came about a week and a half, 2 weeks after American Fiction came out on Christmas Day. And we talked about that here, which is based on one of Everett's earlier books, Erasure. So all of those things here in this space are momentum, and you can go back and look at the sessions. And of course, number 200, we just passed 250. Number 200, of course, recognized that on the day of Nia, the last day of Kwanzaa in this year, 2024, January the 1st, we witnessed and bore witness to the transition of Mashariki Jawanza, who was one of our great queen mothers, queen mother of Indianapolis, just an important figure, one of Sister or Nana Owosi Ayomesi, um, made a queen mother installed in Ghana, who at Kwanzaa time was all things Kwanzaa. So I know the family there, of course, in Indianapolis. This is the spirit. This is the period. A lot of our places in the United States, and it isn't just in the United States. Kwanzaa is celebrated in a number of places. Saw some Kenyan sisters last week at the National Museum of African American History and Culture when we went back down to see the again in Slavery's Wake exhibit and standing around watching these sisters take pictures in front of the Kwanzaa stage that is set up at the National Museum in the lobby, in the foyer, or not in the foyer, in the main floor. We call it the main floor, the event floor, kind of staging floor. And they have a Kwanzaa set there with the candles and the mat and the corn and everything is there. And these sisters are taking pictures. So where y'all from? And one sister had the flag of the country of Kenya on her jacket. She said, "We're from Kenya." Okay. So y'all speak Kiswahili then. Y'all know all these words. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And people say, well, Kwanzaa is just in America and it's only them hotels. Say, okay, your lips should probably go this way. Just for a minute. These open up a little. And understand it has never been just in the United States, that it from its inception has been global because it's part of a Pan-African movement. It is a Pan-African ritual. It is a 7-day Pan-African space. It is not an American holiday. It is incorporated into the calendar of US holidays, but it is something much more than that. And all these attempts to kind of narrate it differently are welcome because it still spreads the message. But yeah, in that space, I was thinking about the fact that many Kwanzaa gatherings, as we do things together in the United States, are collective, citywide Kwanzaas. everywhere from Columbus, Ohio. Shout out to Baba Tony West, who made transition a few weeks ago, who was at the center of that. Now his son Allende, of course, and everybody there, Baba Hatim and all the folks carrying on the tradition in Columbus, whether it be here in Atlanta, where you have all these different organizations who are doing work. Dr. Mariba Kelsey, his daughter, took him over, Reba took him over yesterday to speak at a community Kwanzaa. And of course, as I said, the Shrine is doing its normal thing, and Malcolm X Grassroots doing its thing. In Nashville for many years, Baba Kwame Leo Lillard, now an ancestor, passed it on to Baba Umar Jute. Umar Jute and his wife and family kind of were at the center of the citywide Kwanzaa. That's when my mother was named a Queen Mother of Kwanzaa many years ago. And one of five Queen Mothers, all of whom are now ancestors. So this happens, LA, New York, all over the citywide Kwanzaas, but you could see them in things we've talked about before. And then, of course, just to kind of transition from talking about Kwanzaa for a moment, um, we understand that I want to cover things that have happened this year as we this last session before we go into 2025. Some of the things that happened. We've kind of already started with Kwanzaa this year, the last day of Kwanzaa and the transition of Mashariki Jawanza. In session 202, we talked about Project 2025. Yeah, now we're going to see the playbook enacted to the degree that it can be enacted. Uh, it's interesting because Project 2025 is something that people attribute to our sister, to Raji P. Henson, mentioning at a BET uh, show and people becoming aware of it. And that was an important watershed moment. However, for those of us who are paying attention, and all of us here are paying attention in this metronome of weekly conversations that we have, we know that that's something we've been talking about for quite some time. And more than just talking about it, we began to parse it. We began to think through it and with it and understand its origins. And I'm gonna go back through that now because you can go back and talk. We can see how we talk about where it came from, who was leading it. We talked about Kevin Roberts and his roots and all that kind of thing. And over the arc of this past year, we did our level best, all of us. I think about Aya Fubara and Nelly, who did deep dives on Project 2025 in her community in Texas, and then got online, sitting with Baba Adesoje and Jana and Baba Milton Alamati, and doing those shows. And just, one more example out of so many people who were in churches and community centers who were online talking about this. And we did the best we could, and the story of the election of 2024 in the United States of America, one out of many elections, over half the people in the world, as we keep reiterating, live in countries where there were elections of one form or another that took place this year. We understand that here in the United States of America, while we did the best we could, the story of this election will be, as Prof. Greg Palast tried to tell us all through you and in conversation, and then we watched Vigilantes Incorporated in Nubia during a Nubia and refill session. The story of this election will be voter suppression and disinformation. If the story is ever told at a level where people will finally get it, this election wasn't stolen, this election was conjured and narrated and curated. And when you see the slow-eyed racist Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, bleeding and vomiting out of his mouth in front of a crowd of white nationalists a couple of days ago, saying, "Aren't you glad that Elon Musk is on our side? I went down, I had a chance to sit with him, and we talked, and we're just glad, whatever he did, his hocus pocus, his magic. Yeah, we know what he did. Now we know why he bought X, because we live in a post-literate society, and the disinformation allowed enough shaving off combined with the voter suppression to deliver an election, to curate an audience, to curate an electorate. And so we started talking about Project 2025 at the beginning of this year, session 202, 203. We were talking about Israel and the International Criminal Court. Of course, Bibi Netanyahu is a couple of steps closer to jail. 2025 will not see the survival of the Israeli government. That coalition is going to fracture. It's not sustainable. The racism, the hatred, the anxiety, the mass murder being committed as we speak by the killers of the Israeli Defense Force has rendered the state of Israel, in many ways, has put it in an untenable position in terms of the world. And in terms of domestic politics, Bibi Netanyahu is a little closer to jail, baby. A lot of blood on your hands as you go, but that government won't survive 2025. It's going to have to be renegotiated. And then in session 204, Prof, can you believe? Hasn't been quite a year, but Prof, session 204, that session was entitled The Eagle Has Landed. How do we fly without perching? Joe Madison made transition this year at the beginning of the year. And here we sit in December because you said, you know what, doing things together come naturally. Let's put this with this. Let's mix this over here and let's just see what happens. And so the serious XM community that relied for decades on Joe, on the Black Eagle, and before that, of course, WOL, and before Sirius and it was merged with XM. I mean, all of these things, you know, as he would say, I'm not passing the torch. Not passing the torch is my torch. What I'm going to do though is light your torch with fire from this one because that's how I got this torch. I had a torch, they lit the fire. The torch you get metaphorically is the one you build. You got to earn that. And then you get the fire from the previous generations. You see, you gotta get your weight up. You gotta get your capacity up. And we help. Doing things together comes naturally. And now you get the fire. Joe Madison's fire continues to burn brightly. And that fire has been enhanced by the materials that that fire is now using to continue to grow. And those materials are developed from all of us now who are not Joe Madison. None of us is either any of the rest of us, but what we are is unique people who can work collectively and through that build that collective we. And that we has been made possible not even over the last year, because as the wheels turn in your head as Joe made transition and how these rebroadcasts went on for months, and then you said, somewhere around April or May, yeah, you know what, let's do this. Let me put mix and match things. Let me get Omi over here. Shauna, you did a lead off here. So Kevin Powell, oh, good job, brother. Okay, you still working on the book. Okay, I understand. Okay, Greg, you and Lamont get in there and see what y'all can figure out. And here we are on the verge of the end of 2024 with the fire passed to another generation, the torch of Joe Madison, just like we walk in here every day. I tell Daryl Green, Joe's wingman, man, I don't want to touch nothing in here. I'm just glad to be sitting in the chair. And over the arc of that period, the possibilities that you talk about, Prof, now expanding and connecting to things that didn't exist before. Things that didn't exist 5 years ago or 4 years ago, narrative in Nubia. People calling and say, I'm a Nubian. And by the way, we know that this is the cycle where, as you say, Prof, they getting us. They want you to re-up all your subscriptions. They give you the 7 free days or the free month, and then you forget about it, and it keeps renewing the cycle. And well, guess what? Pinch off a few pennies and join narrative. Because the thing that we are utterly committed to is doing things together. It comes naturally. Doing things together comes naturally. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. And our contributions to that continue apace. So that means that y'all know, y'all can trust that I am going to, while I'm still breathing, I'm gonna be reading, I'm gonna be thinking, I'm gonna be listening, I'm gonna be in conversation, and I'm gonna bring as much of it possible in here every week, 3 days a week on Sirius. I'll do rolling, probably bring back the Black Table in 2025. And then also I'm talking about in a minute, 2025, some things to inject even in these weekly sessions that will help put the floor under this real crisis we have of literacy, because being non-literate is unsustainable in a society that is predatory toward our people, predatory toward all people, as the hillbilly horde is finding out now that Ramaswamy and Musk have said the quiet thing out loud. A few sessions later, about a month later, 208, we started talking about the election cycles in different ways, right? Remember when Joe Biden was going to run for re-election for president of the United States and people were talking about uncommitted and voting uncommitted? I myself voted uncommitted in Maryland because I knew that ultimately I was going to not support the fascists, but I also wanted to make a point. Now, of course, you look at the front page of today's papers, you look at all the websites, you look at it, and you see that the war in Gaza and what Israel is doing is still front page news. It's still driving these campus protests. It's still dividing people and saying that the Democrats are going to lose because that front page news is still there. Here we are 2 years into the wait. It's no longer on the front page. Okay, well, the second page. The second page. Wait, it's no longer on. What? Wait. What do you mean, page 814 in the bottom left-hand corner? Gotcha. The whole point is that a year ago, less than a year ago, we were talking about this thing and how the Democrats needed to figure out how to do something different. We were talking as well about disinformation and voter suppression, but we didn't do enough. So guess what? By the end of the year, we'll talk about that in a minute, after the election, when we had our session entitled, Okay, now we do it our way. See, here's the problem. People, we understand that voting is not a silver bullet. Voting is not a magic solution. Voting is not the objective. It's a means to an end, a tool in the toolbox. But since voting was so problematic, now we get to do it the other way. We not built for that. But guess what? We'll get to that conversation in a minute. Now we're in February, and I'm gonna speed this up some. 210, we had a session entitled When to Rebel, When to Repair, in the wake of the transition of Dory Ladner. So many people made transition this year. Of course, we heard about Greg Gumbel yesterday, the sportscaster, son of New Orleans, raised in Chicago. And of course, there was Quincy Jones. There's so many other people that made transition. James Earl Jones, we talked about so many others. Dory Ladner out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, she and her sister Joyce Ladner, the great Snick warrior. There were so many transitions, and we talked about the life and legacy of Dory Ladner. When you go into our database and you go back and look at session 210, I would encourage people to look at that one in particular. A few weeks later, we're in New Orleans, session 212 for the National Association of Black Social Workers, Destination Liberation. The last time I got to see on top of the earth, the great Baba Leonard Dunston, who knew he was going to make transition this year. Leonard Dunston, who always brought people together with the Black Family Summit. Shout out to Sister Zakia, who has taken the torch light from him, her own torch, the light of Baba Leonard Dunston. Of course, my dear sister Kalita Nichols, who her father made transition about a little over about a month and a half ago, who was one of the National Association of Black Social Workers. We all convened there. It was a beautiful moment of bringing people together to intervene. And I would encourage people to go back and look at Destination Liberation, that session, which was session 212, when we think about doing things together. 214. By then, Orenthal James Simpson made transition. What OJ got to do with anything? A lot. Who is OJ Simpson to us? Who is he to other people? So we talked about that. And OJ is another person. A few weeks later, 219, Brown versus Board of Education. Remember, we talked about Miss Minnie Jean Brown, a Nubian, one of the Little Rock Nine. Who was in town for the 50th anniversary in DC, 50th anniversary of Brown versus 60th of Brown versus Board of Education. Listening to her talk about that and connecting that to now. Nathaniel Briggs, who was a little boy who shed tears on the stage at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, talking about how his family was attacked and how he was one of the shock troops in the case that became Briggs versus Elliott, which kind of blew open the doors, as our dear friend, brother, and comrade Mike Harriet consistently, shout out to Contraband, the formation that you created, and being in conversation with you, proud to create that Contraband platform to which I'm subscribed. I'm subscribing to Contraband. 2025 about to be off the chains. Now we do it our way, friends. Now we do it our way. Elon, what's wrong? Where you going? Hey man, hey Vivek, where you going? Are y'all being chased by the hillbilly horde? No problem. Let them people pass. Why? Because now we do this thing our ways. Doing things together comes naturally to Nathaniel Briggs and Minnie Jean Brown and all those folks, Terrence uh, Johnson, one of the Little Rock Nine, who talk about the sacrifices they made as children and their families made to open up the possibilities in a world where we have often forgotten those things and thus been robbed of the momentum of memory. 222. By 222, we were singing our song in a strange land. That was the second consecutive year that we came on that Saturday from Dayton, Ohio, and Wilberforce, Ohio. Shout out to Kwaku Larry Crow, whose mother made transition, and Mama Olabisi, his partner, who's very close with her mother, who made with his mother, who made transition at 100. Her ritual actually is today. Her ritual is today, her funeral ritual in Dayton, Ohio. And we were out there with them as they lead the annual with the Dayton Council of Elders, which is responsible for the citywide Kwanzaa in Dayton, which of course the Midwest, but between Chicago, Steve Cobb and Chabaduka, their Kwanzaa CD is always beautiful. You can look at the searchable database for that. Columbus, Ohio, as I mentioned, Dayton, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. Brother called in to Sirius from Cleveland the other day, who talked about the citywide Kwanzas and all of that work. But we were in Dayton again. We were in Wilberforce again at Martin Delaney's grave, the graves of Martin and Catherine Delaney, their children, some of their children. Of course, the great Hallie Quinn Brown there. And a lot of Nubians came out. It was a beautiful thing to be there and to be in that convening. And of course, that was the last time that many of us saw the great Tony West, Baba Tony West, as I mentioned, from Columbus, well, not from Columbus, from New York, but has lived decades in Columbus, a backbone of African-centered work, a master drummer and cultural meaning maker, master narrator, of course, in many ways, part of the beating heart of that powerful Pan-African community of Columbus, which is the only reason I'm sitting here. That's how I got recruited into this larger work. Um, a week later, Black Studies, The Fight and the Future. Nathan Hare made transition this year. Some people call him the father of Black Studies, and I don't think that that's wrong to do, because Nathan Hare chaired the first Black Studies program at San Francisco State University after he was ran out of Howard University, because you know Negro colleges can be timid even in the 1960s. And then the following week, 224, I'm not going to go week by week. I'm just kind of the rhythm of the year kind of unfolded this way. 224, we asked the question in that session, what makes a giant? Because Willie Howard Mays out of Alabama made transition in well into his 90s, perhaps the greatest baseball player to ever play the game. And so we talked about that context and how Willie Mays emerged not as an individual, gifted as he was, but as part of a collective, the Negro Leagues, the Birmingham Black Barons, doing things together comes naturally. When you see our excellence, it isn't excellence, whether it be Willie Mays on the Birmingham Black Barons or Beyonce Knowles Carter, with all these black people surrounding her, evoking the ancestors, rodeo champions, a female woman, black rodeo champions, and cowboys, and people who burst barriers in country music of African descent. And all of this, including the roots of country. So, in other words, which are of course African, you can't have country music without the blues, and you can't have the blues without those people that got on the boat. This is not a 1619 conversation, unless you're talking about 1619 BC. But the point is that doing things collectively, as what we do every week, we never talk about individuals outside of the context of the governance formations, who we are to each other, because doing things together comes naturally. Skip forward to the late summer, sessions 230 and 231. We live from Kemet, as the Muslims would say, inshallah, we'll do it again this coming year. The first 2 weeks of August, the information is live. Please, y'all, both from the narrative side and the YouTube side, put it in the chat. You can go to Kemet Study Tour 2025. I hope folks have, saved a few pennies to come with us. We're not going to do everything we did last year. We'll go to all the sites, but in terms of how we convene and how we approach the study, we're going to enhance that. We listen to folks and we listen to everybody every year who travels to figure out how we can make some adjustments, make some additions, make some changes. And it is a living journey. And we like to think it is the premier immersion in the Nile Valley for Africans and others who have not been to the Nile Valley. So y'all want to mark that on your calendar. And if you want to go back and look at what we were doing last year, then I encourage you to go to 230 and 231. And the previous year, of course, we were out of the country when Africans in Montgomery handled their business with some folding chairs and some deep encouragement and desire to say, we are not going back now, we do it our way. But you can go back to 2 years worth in those August sessions, August 2023 and August 2024, of conversations about Kemet to get a taste of what we were doing. If you're subscribed to Narrative, you can come into the Office Hours archive and you can see I did a little slideshow after every time we've been to kind of give people a sense. And for those who've already put your deposits down, you'll be hearing from us soon. Dr. Beatty will send a message out, our leader, and we'll be convening to have the first sessions. We're going to change that too as well. We're going to introduce many of the things we're going to see in August. We're going to introduce those in the sessions over the arc of the next few months. So by the time we get on the planes in New York and DC, by the time we head to the Nile Valley, we will be well familiar with what we're going to see. And that's just going to open up another level of engagement with our ancestors in the Nile Valley. So we talked about that as well. Came back to this country, and Joe Biden got pushed out the door. And on the way out, knife in his back, he turned around like uh, 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 Keanu Reeves in Constantine and shot the bird at the people. Kamala Harris, yikes! Oh, you can't steal, can't steal the nomination, can you? And Kamala Harris did something that is unprecedented in American, in U.S. Presidential politics. Put together in the space of no time, and looking at Jen Psaki, and then maybe she should have discarded more of those Biden people, but what can you do? Put together in the space of a few weeks a presidential campaign, ran the campaign, and won the election except for disinformation and voter suppression. Hard to do, particularly when you're a black woman, because as I forget, was it Ginger Rogers who said when he said, "Oh, Fred Astaire, I can do everything Fred Astaire does, except I have to do it backward in heels." Yeah, well, try being a black woman backward in no shoes that you had to go get some shoes, and then anyway, all that we began covering in 235, a high point. A high point. The story of this election will be voter suppression and disinformation. But we talked about the debates in the wake of that. And then 241 through 244. 3 consecutive Saturdays, we hit the theme running for the borders, too close to the edges, because now we're building up to that confrontation in the most important US election in the 20th and 21st centuries. And guess what? This next election will be the most important. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. We might have passed the event horizon. People say every year they say it's the most important election, and every year is true. People you can't think just sequentially. You got to think in terms of long views of history, because what we're approaching is an event horizon. You see, the anxiety and fear that drives the hillbilly horde, the white nationalists, has reached a fever pitch, and now having captured the federal apparatus, the real threat, which is class for a white nationalist, is being revealed as Vivek Ramaswamy, who Ann Coulter says she couldn't vote for because he's an Indian, and the son of apartheid, a deep apartheid state believer, Elon Musk, are here saying we're gonna get immigrants to replace the jobs that are here because they got college educations. And even Donald Trump, stumbling around in his adult mind, vomits out a few days ago that everyone who came to this country who gets a college degree, I don't care what's 2 year college, community college, PhD, they should get a green card. What just happened? What just happened? He just threw your ass out the bus. I'm sorry, you were never in the bus. That was an illusion, friends, because guess what? They didn't pull him in the back room and they said, unless you want us to prematurely trigger the 25th Amendment, friend, because Junior Varsity been real quiet. Why? Because he know what's coming. Unless you want us to prematurely pull the 25th Amendment, you run your ass out there and salute. Guess what? Because for the working class people and the poor people, the ones that William Barber and them been trying to get together, who should now take another look at that multiracial coalition, that fusion politics coalition, as we've talked about, that happened in the 19th century in Wilmington, North Carolina, and the great grandsons of that, people like and daughters of that, like William Barber, trying to bring that back with the Poor People's Campaign. Take another look at that because we're approaching an event horizon. And so when you think about that in the context of class, Musk and Ramaswamy now, we in, drop the pretenses. We want the PhDs from India, China, we'll take them from everywhere. Trump, give them green cards. Yassa, yassa, yassa. And what about me? Well, we're going to bring industry back. Well, good, I'll get a job. No, fool, because Trump says we're going to bring factories, make them bring factories here instead of shipping stuff over here. We're going to put the tariffs up. Okay, let's just play this out for 30 seconds. Let's say you put the tariffs up. China says, what? So you want us to build a factory in the United States rather than ship our cars, which you don't let come over there anyway. You're going to put 100% tax, 200% tax. No problem. We'll build a factory. We'll build 2 factories. We'll build 15 factories. How many factories do you want? Wait, what just happened? What just happened? We're going to put a factory here, 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 here. And in little places in Ohio where they're eating the dogs and y'all went out and voted against your class interests, they're going to put a factory up. And when you take your hillbilly horde ass out there to get a job, you're going to realize they don't even have light bulbs in the factory. Why? I read a long article about 2 weeks ago on something called dark factories. You know what those are? Those are factories where the machines build the stuff in there. They don't even turn the lights on. Why? Because the machines are working and they don't have eyes. The only time you need to turn on some lights is when you send a couple of humans in there to make sure that the thing is still operating correctly. So all the hillbillies who thought their jobs are coming back, get ready to dance, friend. You can't even afford that Tesla in the first place. And of course, anyway. So yeah, we talked about that for 3 consecutive weeks, running for the borders too close to the edges. And then in the wake of the elections, 244, now we do it our way. See, the lessons don't change. We know how these things operate, or we should. And then, of course, in the wake of that, some people were shell shocked. 246 last month, we were back in Philadelphia for when we learned we. That was a Thursday. That Thursday, I kind of helped open on a panel, a plenary there to talk about education, not just Black men, but Black people. How we learn we. Of course, our dear brother Sharif El Mekki uh, prayers and embrace energy out to you and your wife and the girls, the family. Understand that your great aunt, the matriarch of the family, has had a little bit of a health challenge, but now we're praying her full blessing and recovery, as we do for everyone in this holiday season in particular. But they named that session When We Learn We because the previous year we had talked about it here in class, doing things together comes naturally. And these synergies are building a momentum that is undeniable. And beautifully, it is not controlled by, it does not come from, it is not influenced by any external social structure force. And that is what unsettles, that is what disrupts in a social structure context. And that is what sustains in a governance formation. So these themes we could talk about over the last year. And, again, I'm just going to just mention a few things. There's fracture in the social structure, the global social structure. There's multipolarity. Today's Financial Times walking through what 2025 might look like in the world. Offers five possibilities, one of the columnists, in terms of governments and what quote unquote Trump's government might do. One is that there's a new great power bargain. Meaning what? The United States, the sole superpower in the world. Okay, China just clearing its throat. And remember, China has a memory of thousands of years, at least 4,000 plus years. You want to get a kick? Ask somebody who is Chinese or who is tapped into Chinese culture what year it is and when is the new year, and just be prepared to remember that these numbers, these little arbitrary European inspired numbers coming out of the Christocentric, the Abrahamic traditions, that ain't the only way people look at these things in the world. But it's possible, number one of the five, that there's going to be a new bargain emerge through the so-called great powers. Wait, but I thought the United States was the only great power. Not if you're paying attention. And week after week, we've been tracking China, the biggest electric vehicle market in the world, and the best electric vehicles being produced. People run around in them Teslas, which are basically battery units with some wheels on them and some electronic stuff to help them drive. But in China, BYD, they build in the EVs, and they shipping them everywhere. The EU may very well open up and allow those cars. Donald Trump said, "We ain't letting those cars come in." Okay. And, the finance minister in Canada resigned from Justin Trudeau, the prime minister, his cabinet. He done run down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss some behind and a few feet, comes back, "Hey man, I got to go. Why? You about to mess up." Canada and Mexico are tied deeply to the United States economy, but that don't mean that our politics must mirror their politics. China built some factories in Mexico. Canada, we shipping stuff here. The EU may open up. It may be a great bargain. Trump's going to tell Putin, "Nah, keep the Ukraine. And what else do you want?" And Putin is like, "I want all those troops in those frontline NATO states who are coming east. I want them to back the F up." Trump said, "Okay, boss, I got you. England, I know you ain't NATO anymore, but I'm going to meet you after I talk to France and Macron and all the Germans and all these people, And by the way, you see Elon Musk is trying to prop up the Nazi party in Germany right now. Steve Bannon from his townhouse in the shadow of Capitol Hill and his War Room podcast. These white nationalists got a fever dream at this point, and it may drive the European Union to say, "Oh, y'all about to screw us. You know what? We need to renegotiate our own relationship with China and with Russia." So there'll be a kind of great power bargain. These so-called level mid-level countries like Brazil, the EU, that bloc, they will renegotiate potentially. That's number one. Remember that the 20th of January, the day that Donald Trump is supposed to get sworn in again on whatever. I don't know why he put his hand on the Bible. I want to see anybody burst into flame. Then again, put your hand on the Bible. Let's see what happens. That is also the same day that Davos in Switzerland, the Davos Forum, where all the so-called elites, the big money boys and girls, get together to talk about how they're going to take over or continue to take over the world. Well, Trump's not going to be there. It could be a renegotiation of the great powers. Then it might be number two of the five in the FT the other day. They said maybe it'll be war by accident. See, that could happen. That's why BB is unsustainable in Israel. You see, Syria is now being renegotiated. The Turks are at the table complaining about the Kurds. The United States is like, "Well, we was backing the Kurds. What are we going to do?" And maybe there will be war by accident because there's a lot of proxy wars going on right now. As far as Putin's concerned, he's at war with the European Union. It's a proxy war in Ukraine. You keep pushing, hey, maybe there'll be war by accident. You got a whole fool now in charge of the United States federal apparatus. And but fortunately, he's taking orders from some of these people very clearly. So maybe that won't happen, but you never can tell. And there are things, there are known knowns and there are known unknowns, to quote of all people, Donald Rumsfeld. Number three of the five possibilities for 2025 and beyond: anarchy in a leaderless world. That's what the Financial Times columnist says. What does that mean? That means ain't nobody in charge in terms of these countries, these heads of state. And as a result, there's room to operate. Now they're calling it anarchy, and I understand. The Financial Times, like The Economist, like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, like the Washington Post, or the LA Times, you have an interest. It isn't our interest. Your interest is profit. Your interest is managing. Your interest is shaping opinion. It's not what we are interested in. We're interested in our common humanity and doing things together, which comes naturally. So I understand why they would call it anarchy. But if you are in Burkina Faso, if you are Ibrahim Traore, and if you watch Adesoje and Milton Alamadi weekly on their report dealing with Africa, if you watch our friend and brother Gerald Horn, who has now leaned hard into social media, leaned hard into internet, particularly YouTube, and so you can hear him a lot everywhere talking about these geopolitical implications. If you're in Mali, if you're in Burkina Faso, if you're in Cote d'Ivoire, if you're in other places like that, particularly I'm thinking now about the Western Sudan, the Sahel region, particularly like Burkina Faso, this is an opportunity. If nobody's in charge, then we can make some moves, paying down debt, of ultimately paying off debt, taking our natural resources back. And at this very moment, if you're a nativist, if you're a Black nativist, if you are a descendant of a slave, or you're a foundational Black American, you might want to rethink turning inward and being a blackface version of Donald Trump's rhetoric. Because this is not the time to cut yourself off from other people. This is the time to do things together, because not only does it come naturally, it might just save your life at this moment. Because if there is, in fact, going to be what the Financial Times would call anarchy in a leaderless world, that's opportunity in a world that might get closer to what it looked like in the 1950s, late 50s and 60s, when African countries, Caribbean countries, Latin American countries, while these other people were fighting each other, were able to cut off a little space and carve out a little space to operate. The fourth of the five: globalization without America. Fascinating to me. In fact, I'll just name the fifth of the five to get it out of the way. The fifth, they said America first succeeds. What? The tariffs pay off, you collapse China's economy, you break Iran. This is the fantasy option. I'm saying y'all just wrote that in here because the funders don't want to be nervous. But number four, interestingly, globalization without America. Donald Trump talking that smack got it close enough for Trump, for Musk and them to put him over the line with disinformation and voter suppression in the various states. And now you caught the car. What you gonna do? The tariffs? Really? Them same hillbillies that voted for you bust up in Walmart and the price of draws went up 500%. Now they mad. What they gonna do now? They might still vote for you, but some of them gonna cry, and you're trying to shred the social safety net. But people should be reassured, because it's very hard to untangle a federal bureaucracy that you spent a couple of centuries building, 2.5 centuries building. So there will be damage, but it won't be the damage that Project 2025 thinks they're going to bring off. Because again, we're not talking about a 4-year election cycle. We're talking about a 2-year election cycle, because the so-called midterms are in 2 years. And as we do things together, building local power, building power in states like Maryland or California, places where you can begin to seize the apparatus, then you could perhaps forestall the worst of it or prevent the worst of it. But meanwhile, globalization without America looks like, if you want to put up tariffs and put up walls and keep people out and say you got to buy American, no problem. We're accelerating the inevitable. This is a country, the United States of America, that is in decline. And by that, I mean the economy, which has a huge lead in terms of uh, intellectual capital. The university system's best in the world. Technology has a lead. All these things. If you go nativist at this point, that lead is not only going to shrink, it might disappear. And guess what? The rest of the world is no longer beholden to you. The dollar is the reserve currency of the world. Go nativist and see what happens. You could lead very easily to globalization without America. And now the inflation explodes because the dollar ain't the only thing we're doing. BRICS is real, friends. And while Donald Trump is talking crazy on January the 20th, in Davos, the BRICS people are learning that we tried this digital currency thing. We floated it. It's kind of working. We'll continue to develop it. What did he say? That's funny as hell. Okay, now, as we were saying, come on, China, you got to do something with this wine, and Japan, you really thinking about really strengthening your defense now. I know you're very close to the United States, but you also have a population that can kind of be transformed more easily than that. Wait, and Germany, I know you got to beat back these Nazis, and I see Elon Musk trying to interfere with your election, but you're not the United States, are you? Then they all bust out laughing. Oh, what did he say now? What did he just say? Okay, leave that alone. In other words, globalization without America is a real possibility. You had to rethink that. So we have to pressure wash the illusions. We're going to quadruple down on that in 2025 as I kind of begin to wind this up. What lies beneath the illusions? The ways of knowing that African people have that Kwanzaa brings out: generosity, solidarity. Mike Vick don't need no money. He says, I want to teach at Norfolk State. So he goes to the press conference. You see the president there, the sister who's president of Norfolk State. Now there's rumblings. What else is going to go on? Maybe it's a different scenario. Maybe it's the same as Deion Sanders. I doubt it. Maybe it's closer to what Eddie George is doing at Tennessee State. I believe it. And maybe it's not even either of those two things, but this whole notion where let's ultimately gets closer to a full commitment to the place I was born and raised. And I see Allen Iverson showing up to press conference. I'm like, oh, this is very interesting because these boys are from that area. And then I'm thinking, wow, what else could happen? What else could bring up? But that's a way of knowing of generosity, a way of knowing of community to bring things together. And in this system that we live in, there are cracks in that system that could make that possible. So of course they're getting their heads together. How do we buy Vic out if he's successful? How do we make the offer from Virginia Tech? Or how do we make the offer from the pros? Because hey, Teddy Bridgewater just won a state championship in Florida. Now here he's signed with an NFL team. Why? Hey, that's great. Go, Teddy. But something else could be afoot. Several years ago, in the wake of the killings of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, when they thought they're going to have a whole ass rebellion on their hands, they started to try to make a few concessions. What did that lead to? Well, you got Kendrick Lamar saying they're not like us, thanks to Jay-Z and them at the Super Bowl. That's beautiful. It's nice. It'll have some unintended consequences. But this, what we talking about now, ain't that. We're talking about institutions. We're thinking about doing things together at an institutional level. And it might be interesting. In this year to come, we're going to have to really, if we can, and I think we have to, that's why we're here week after week, refocus on literacy. Financial Times had an article yesterday by Sarah O'Connor. She asked the question, are we becoming a post-literate society? She went through the OECD survey of adult skills. The OECD stands for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They gave a survey to 160,000 plus people, age 16 to 65 in 2023. 31 different countries and economies participated. And it said on average, 18% of adults in these countries, including the United States, don't have the most basic levels of literacy and numeracy and analytical skill. They don't have the basic level. The countries that they said scored the highest in this index, as they surveyed all these people in real time, they went to them and surveyed Finland, Japan, Norway, Sweden, and the Netherlands. What do they have in common? Cultural homogeneity, for the most part. The United States is heterogeneous culturally. It isn't a nation. It is a state with many different nations in it. And at its core, the core of the project is settler colonialism and white nationalism, meaning what? We have never thought of the Africans as human, then and now, and the indigenous people are disposable as well. And everybody else has to fight their way into some form of whiteness. We ain't keen about these Asians and these Spanish speakers either, but in the Spanish speaking community, like the English speaking community, there is whiteness and there's a way for you to kind of transition your way in. Tatiana Hernandez talks about that in her books and her work. But ultimately, what we have is this heterogeneous community, this culturally heterogeneous community where people are at each other's throats, and at the core of it is whiteness. So the United States get dumber, friends. 18%, according to this survey, don't have most basic levels in literacy, in numeracy, in the capacity to apply rigorous critical thinking skills. And higher education qualifications, Goodman writes, don't necessarily mean better skills. 30% of people in the United States of America, one out of every three person, as it is narrated in this article, 30% of Americans read or score on this OECD test at a one. That's the lowest level, meaning 30% of people in the United States of America read, do numbers in their head, and have analytical thinking skills, develop skills that are on the level of 10-year-olds or below. Meaning that 1 out of every 3 person in the United States of America struggle to read, to count, to do basic thinking work. But guess what? We're worried about everybody, but we're worried about Africans. And guess what? We putting a dent in that. Office hours, our classes in narrative, and there'll be more classes mounted in 2025 every week here. Gonna make a few slight adjustments in this notion. Because what she writes is here, let me quote this verbatim. Says technology changed the way many of us consume information away from longer, more complex pieces of writing, such as books and newspaper articles, to short social media posts and video clips. At the same time, social media has made it more likely that you, quote, read stuff that confirm your views rather than engage with diverse perspectives. And that's what you need to get to the top levels on this assessment, where you need to distinguish fact from opinion, navigate ambiguity, and manage complexities. Now, they also say there's hope. The technology. So what we're going to do with AI? How's that working? And look, I'm in conversation with young people over these last few days, listening to how they apply AI. It just confirms what I'm seeing, what we're all seeing, that this is a threat. This is going to be a real problem, and it also has within it some opportunities as we talk about it. And this is where I'll end with this article. She says, in order to level up skills where you need to apply critical thinking skills and literacy skills and numeracy skills, you have to have a strong foundation. The example they use is when you call somebody on the phone, would it be Apple or Amazon or something, you get the chat assistant, and so there's a real person on the other side chatting with you. Well, the AI is helping that person develop the capacity to interact with you. New vocabulary, different ways to answer, problem solving. The AI is doing it in tandem with the person who is typing, the person who's on the phone. That having been said, what this article says is that can help train a new workforce to level up their skills, their intellectual skills, their reading skills, their number skills, their critical thinking skills, but only, this is the key part, only if they have a foundation to begin with. Otherwise, they're completely dependent on the AI. Otherwise, they're completely dependent on the AI. So that means that what we're going to do here, beginning next week, we'll do small things at first, like a book of the week, and we won't do a deep dive into the book, but we're going to talk a little bit about. We remember we've talked many times about how to read, what to put in conversation. We're going to do a little bit more of that, be a little bit more thoughtful about that, because we want to really, really emphasize literacy. So if you got young people, have them come in on Saturday. Get a narrative subscription. Come in on Mondays because office hours is going to reflect that as well. Some kind of hard skill stuff, some conversation around that kind of thing to help us. And this is just me. No, this is collective work and responsibility. We got a lot of teachers, we got a lot of educators, a lot of people who have self-taught, a lot of people who are doing that. We're going to crowdsource this. And at the top of the year, Prof, you can come on back. I'm going to wind up. This is the last thing I want to say. Uh, the top of the year, next year, uh, the Western region of ASCAC had a virtual conference a couple of weeks ago. The Midwestern region did a hybrid. We're going to try something the weekend of January 24th, 25th, 26th in Columbus, Georgia. John Henry Clark turns 100 years old on January the 1st, 2025, the day of Nia. That's his birthday. We'll be doing a gravesite pilgrimage. We're going to be in person at George Washington Carver High School in Columbus, Georgia. So we'll be doing in class from down there. Look forward to seeing some of y'all. Y'all can find the information out there. It's online. And then we'll post it in Nubia and make sure people have it. But at that point, we're going to try to talk about what it means to come together and institution build, because now we got a bunch of people who are in these valences, in these rhythms, and we're going to now introduce, and this is an anticipation prior for what we've been talking about, which is this early summer, late spring, early summer in-person journey to various places. So I'm going to stop with that as we go.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. And I just wrote it. I'm just wrote it down so maybe we can have some video support so that
Yes.
you're not carrying around a camera.
No, no. Well, you already told me how to do the thing with the wireless joint, so I'm gonna be. I'll be ready.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, yeah.
And to your point, I would like for I know we have a lot of book clubs in Nubia as well. Like I want to be
Yes.
more purposeful. I was thinking about this like 25 years ago when I was on the radio in New York. I remember studying because I'm always study a space that I'm coming into. One of the largest, the most popular radio station in Great Britain was one where they just read books on the air. And I thought
Oh,
how
yes.
powerful that was because they had a lot of immigrants who couldn't speak English very well, but they were learning through someone reading to them. And I thought about reading Rainbow and why that went away. And you
Ah, yes.
you think about the power of that. I was thinking, while my parents had a lot of books in my house and encyclopedias, I learned through media, whether it was Schoolhouse Rock or
Yes.
Sesame Street or Electric Company. There was so many places for young people to sit in front of a TV and actually learn. And then you think about a radio broadcast reading. And back in the day, they serialized books in newspapers, in the Harper
Yes.
Bazaar and magazines because people, when you're learning, you need it repetitively, you need it in little bite-sized morsels so that you can not feel overwhelmed. And I think a lot of us have been addled and atrophied that muscle because of the way society has purposefully led us into these spaces that what you're doing here is so valuable. So i
What
am
we're
i
doing.
am looking forward to it. Yeah, we all are, but you're leading the way. And
Yeah, yeah.
and it's
I'll,
important.
I'll take that.
It's important that we have that Baba around the tree teaching
Yeah.
us in different places. I'm definitely leaning into reading more. And which is a challenge with our time, but you got to make time for this
You do.
because it's the thing that's going to save us.
You
It is
do.
the thing that
It
will
is.
get us to freedom.
It
So
is. It is the thing. It is the thing. Um, I know these next few days you're gonna put on some black eyed peas and some
no, I'm not doing any of that. No, I'm not cooking. I'm
you
not
said I'm
doing
not doing any of
nothing.
that.
I'm doing
I
nothing.
love
I
it.
got my little book that I got on audio. I'm going to walk. I'm going to focus. I got to do my little goals. I may write a book
Excellent.
in the next couple of days. I don't know. Maybe.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been writing. I've been writing a little bit every day. I've been on it. So yeah, y'all look for. In fact, I'm gonna say less about that. I didn't say anything, so I won't say anything
Don't
else.
say
Just to
anything.
say, stay
No,
tuned. No
yeah,
question.
I was looking at my goals from last year, and I abandoned them at some point, and I was like,
Oh
I'm not.
no.
Yeah, I had in my goals write at least 3 pages every day, and I didn't do that at all. Maybe in January, and then I was just
Yeah.
like people in the gym. I just like stopped doing it. But this time around, I'm starting now writing every day because that's a muscle that you have to
It is
keep
a
working.
muscle.
Yeah.
It is a muscle, and reading's a muscle. You
Yes.
know, I fought myself. There's a new article, there's a new book on the Wagner Group, the mercenaries, and it's trying to understand West Africa. I said, I'll put this in the bag, but I emptied my bag, my Actively Black backpack. I love Actively Black. They're doing some interesting things down there in Texas. Anyway, so I emptied it and I said, I'm only gonna put 2 books in here. And I ended up putting like 3 and some other stuff. But I a book that I said I wouldn't read this, I wouldn't be able to read it without uninterrupted time. And on this bus for half a day, I'm gonna have uninterrupted time. So I put this book, Global Marxism, in, which is very, in fact, I'll show it to y'all. If you let me just, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
show it.
absolutely.
This,
Hold on.
okay, this is
Go.
in fact, this is the book Global Marxism, Decolonization and Revolutionary Politics, Kwame Nkrumah, Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh. And I know that this is a book that I wanted to read. I just got this book. And so I put it in my bag because I can't go nowhere. I'm here. And of course, like you said, it's a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And of course, I read all the time, but a book where I need to really focus, I need that attention. And I put my earphones in, like the earpods in, because and I go into iTunes and I put in the library sounds. So in my mind, I'm in the reading room at the 42nd Street
Wow.
Library in New York, because and so it doesn't matter that people are yelling and talking and somebody's, I mean, I'm just, unless of course you smell marijuana, but yeah, that's a different thing. But the point is that I'm at the library, and then I got here and went over to see Mama Nia, who, by the way, sends her love as always at Madu Bookstore. She says, she's probably here right now. She says, I'm at home, I'm in class, and I got my pad because I have to write down the books because the people come in here immediately after class and ask me for the book. Now she's a bookstore owner. So we went over there to see her the first day I was here. And of course, second day. And you know, to see what bookstores have been able to do, black bookstores, because of our space is important. So I bought a couple of things. This is one I wasn't aware of. I hadn't seen this. This sister here, Janelle Pearson, has written a book about her father called For the Strength of Harlem. Plays Toussaint Pearson. Toussaint Pearson is her father. These are pictures of him. But he's the guy. Remember this famous picture of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X in Harlem? He's the dude in the back that you always see in this picture, but nobody knew who he was. Well, his daughter, here she is. She's a member of the Harlem Writers Guild. She's born and raised in Harlem. She said, I'm going to finally write a book about my dad for the strength. And it's not just about him, it's about coming out of Alabama, growing up in New York, all the people he knew. Just about anybody famous in Harlem, he had a cab company. He started these other businesses. But the only way most people know him is this famous picture of Malcolm and Muhammad Ali, and he's in the back. This guy was a real part of that community. And so, anyway, I'm just saying that to say that reading these kind of things is it that is the key to replenish ourselves and to help us understand who we are to each other and to help us grow. But you do need time and you got to carve it out. So I read Global Marxism because I was trapped on the bus, which is what I did. I put myself in that trap so I could do that. And I picked up this other book because there are black bookstores, what, 300 plus of which are in our narrative compendium, where we can not only support them and keep them going, but then they are supplying us with things like this that you're not gonna find on Amazon. You're not gonna find. You shouldn't even look for them there. So yeah, that's one to miss those two
I,
books. Yeah.
I actually went to the bookstore yesterday,
Did
and
you?
I did. There's a beautiful bookstore in the Short Hills Mall, and
Yes.
Indigo. It's a Canadian, but it's the way it's laid out. I was like, those are goals for me. Like I want to have a space like that. But I left there with no books because I was like, every book I picked up, I was like, Dr. Carr would probably say this book is trash because
No,
he
no,
wrote
no,
it.
no, no,
No,
no.
I was
Don't
like,
say that
oh,
shit.
this book is trash. Every book that they had in the front, I was like, oh, I think this is trash. I think Dr. Carr's gonna think it's trash.
No,
So
no, no,
I
no,
was like,
no,
I'm
no,
glad you
no.
held those up so that I can.
No.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
get
get that
every
Che
book.
Guevara joint. I'm gonna get that
I,
one. Yeah,
yeah. Oh, listen, this book is it's really fascinating. But yeah, yeah. Please,
I didn't know what to get though. My point is, I appreciate every week when
hey
you
y'all.
hold up books because I don't know what I don't want to feed myself poison.
No, I
And
understand.
I don't want to waste my time and money on somebody's regurgitated, not well thought out dissertations. And you allow us
Yes.
to actually know what is good and what is not. So I
Well,
appreciate
well,
this.
well, I appreciate you too. I know we're getting off. I do want to say though two things. Number one, yeah, I'm not big on books being trash, except when it's just us. Like all of us hours we walk through stuff, and I can be hard on books. So I appreciate everybody. We have these conversations, even around Ta-Nehisi's work. Very important. The second thing is that it's hard when we have limited time to figure it out, which is why I've warmed to the graphic novel. Because I love comic books, like a lot of us. These graphic kind of things are interesting in terms of points of entry. And I'm gonna show you one. If you
Okay,
drop me out just for 1 second. This one just came out. Thomas Piketty, who has gotten famous over these last 10 years or so for his books on capital. He's out of France. The whole French tradition of these public intellectuals, very different. Well, they are now starting to do graphic novel interpretations and adaptations of his work. Capital is a huge book. Then the book that comes after it, Capital and Ideology. I mean, these are huge books. Well, this is an interesting book. Let's say you want to read something and try to understand political economy and how economies work and what's going on now, the crises of capitalism and globalization. Well, Piketty, there's a book now, it's a graphic novel called Capital and Ideology, a graphic novel adaptation. This is by Claire Alette and Benjamin Adam. And I think it's fascinating because, look, I just look at it back. It says a retelling of global history, a scathing critique of contemporary politics, and a bold proposal for a new and fairer economic system. Well, it's comics. Read the graphic, you know. And then that's what I'm saying. So I walk in the store and say, wait a minute, that isn't Piketty. I got all of Piketty's books. And I can read this too. Why? Don't assume that. because it's a graphic novel, it isn't valuable. That becomes a point of entry. And in
Yes.
some way, yeah, and it also builds literacy too. It also builds literacy too.
And
So
when
anyway, so yeah.
No, I mean, and when I was talking about bite size, we all are at different places in our, understanding and our, it's like it becomes sometimes very lonely when you are in a space you want to talk about things that you just read. And this
Yeah.
is why I really value the space that we have in Nubia and your office hours, because it allows for us. And when office hours, when people come in with that to engage with the text, is when it's really valuable, because I didn't consider something that, somebody's going to bring
Yes.
up, Mama Toya
Yes.
is going to bring up something that came, after she does the roll call, but there's going to
Yes.
be some things, or Lloyd's going to come in and, bring in
Lloyd.
a thought from a book that I didn't think about. And this is why we're in community around this. Reading by yourself, whether it's the Bible
Yes. That's
or
right.
or
That's
anything
right.
else, we need community to figure out how we
That's
serve
right.
one another through the text. So
That's right.
I'm
That's
grateful.
right.
I'm grateful.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thanks, y'all. We'll see y'all Monday night. I'll be at
Yep.
office hours. We're gonna we'll continue. And in fact, I really do miss this, Prof. I miss when we were doing the books together. We might have to pause the intro class for a while and maybe pick a book and do it, because it really does give a
Yeah.
different thing. Yeah, you're right. You're
And even
absolutely
for
right.
those of us who have read the books,
That's right.
as
That's
I
right.
was saying, I had to challenge myself, because I thought once you read a book, it's done. But you're changing. Hopefully, you're growing. So you go
Yes.
back and read that book at a different stage in your life, and you get something completely different out of the book, whether it's the
Yes.
Bible or Toni Morrison. I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
that's right. That's right.
books reveal you, really. It's more than just reading. I read this
No
book.
question.
It's
No
really about
question.
you growing. But anyway,
No
more
question.
on that.
Yeah.
See you on
Yeah.
Monday.
See you on Monday.
Happy rest of Kwanzaa, and
Happy Kwanzaa.
we got some things to do. All right. Love
Yes,
you.
we do. Love you.